of the settings menus to explain their usage. So if I select settings menu, skip login, and I'm going to advance to the barcode tab. In the barcode menu, there are all the selections to define how your barcodes are intended to be used while you're using the product. The first selection, barcode type, specifies whether we're going to be scanning a barcode on your prescription label that contains the RX number, the NDC, and quantity, in which case we call that the validation barcode, or the PMSS, which means you're using your icon interfaced with your pharmacy system. So PMSS stands for Pharmacy Management Software System. So if you select that, then the barcode is going to just reference a specific transaction that was sent over from the pharmacy system, so we know which prescription you're attempting to fill. So you'll notice that the choices below here change significantly depending on which one you've selected here. So PMSS only has a couple of choices here, our scan and count mode and the test mode, whereas validation has several additional choices. So I'm going to go ahead and explain the various choices related to validation. So when you select validation, the first thing to define is what is the barcode length. If I select that, our default is 22. That's what we defined as our standard validation barcode. However, we can interpret just about any barcode that your pharmacy system can produce that contains those entities, the prescription number, the drug number, and the quantity. We can even handle prescription labels that only contain two of those three, any two of those three, if you're unable to get a barcode added that contains all three. The ideal is to have all three of them, but we can handle any of those. And down in the bottom, you'll notice it says type -1 in for a variable length barcode. So if I have a barcode whose length varies, then I would press clear and type -1, OK, and now it believes that the barcode is going to vary in length, and it's not going to reject any barcodes that are other than the specified length. But I'm going to stick with 22 for our default here, for our standard barcode length. So the only time when you'd use the variable length is when the last entity in your barcode varies in length. The first two entities, like the RX number and the NDC number, have to be consistent, but the quantity, some pharmacy systems will only spit out the required number of digits to represent that quantity, and therefore you end up with a variable length quantity. For instance, when it's fixed length, you'd have 0030 for a 30 count prescription. For a variable length, you might just have 30, whereas you might have 100 for a larger quantity prescription. Okay, so that's the barcode length parameter. The next is the RX offset. So this tells the icon how many digits to skip in the validation barcode before looking for the RX number. So the default is 0, meaning the RX number is the very first item in the prescription label. The next item is the RX length. Most prescriptions use a 7-digit RX number, but the icon can handle any given length of barcode that you'd like to use. So you can change that if you're using a different length prescription number in your barcode. The next is the drug number offset. So for our default, the drug number comes right after the prescription number. So if the prescription number is 7, then the offset for the drug number is 7. But some prescription labels have an extra blank digit in between, or some other random number in between the RX number and the NDC, or they have them in different order, in which case you can just specify the proper offset. For instance, if our default again is offset of 7 because it comes right after the RX number, and the drug number length in the USA, that's always 11. In other countries, you'll have variable length drug numbers, but for USA applications, it's always an 11-digit NDC. Next is the quantity offset. In our case, the quantity comes right after the drug number, and since the RX number is 7 and the drug number is 11, 711 is 18, and therefore the quantity starts at the 18th character of the barcode. So we have an offset of 18, and the length, our default again is 4. That allows for prescriptions up to 9,999 pills. That's sufficient for most pharmacies we've run into. So that's what we use as our default, but again, you can change that to what you need. Now, if you did have a variable length for the quantity, you would also type in a -1 in this field in order to specify that the quantity does vary in length. So that's how you would normally use the validation mode with those settings. Now, the next set of parameters here is related to the RX scan and count mode. That can be used for a couple different purposes. Generally speaking, it's used at pharmacies who don't have a validation label and aren't able to add that barcode on, or perhaps just don't want to add it on during their evaluation of the icon during their trial period. So if they have a barcode that contains just the RX number, we can set up the icon to recognize that only. So if you select that as enabled, then the next parameters that show up here, I slide the screen up, you can now see additional parameters. So those can be, the next one is, does the RX barcode contains alpha? We've run into a few pharmacies where the RX barcode varies in length, but it always has alpha. So in order to distinguish which barcodes are supposed to be interpreted as an RX barcode, you specify this as alpha. That's fairly rare. It's used mainly in military pharmacies, but it's available here for applications where you need that. The next would be your RX barcode detected, save and finish. So when I do select the RX barcode, do you want it to just grab that number and save it, or do you also want it to execute the finish function and save your counts and finish? Normally that's how the product's used, is with a save and finish. So that's our default if you do turn on this feature. But again, we recommend using the full validation mode, in which case you wouldn't need to use the RX scan and count mode. The next parameter would be the RX barcode length. So in order to know when we're scanning a barcode, if it doesn't contain alpha, which is the exception, you would just specify the length of that barcode. So if you specify it at 7, now it knows whenever I scan a 7-digit barcode while I'm counting, we'll assume that's the RX barcode and we will save that number. As opposed to if I did scan another UPC label because I'm grabbing a new stock bottle, we need to know when to differentiate those two. So this tells us what length the barcode will be for an RX number. So again, our default 7, but you can change it to whatever length your specific RX number would be. And so that's the total barcode length. Some people have a longer barcode, but only a portion of that barcode contains the RX number. So you can then specify the offset of the RX number and the length of the RX number. So if I select down here to the RX length, this tells it's a 7-digit RX number, and the next parameter tells us how many digits come before the RX number in the barcode. The default again is 0, but you could have some other digits that precede the RX number in the barcode. The last thing is our test mode. So the test mode can be used after setting up your validation barcode by coming here and scanning the barcode in your pharmacy. So if I've configured my validation barcode length and RX offset and length and NDC offset and length, etc., then if I go ahead and scan the barcode, it will now show me all of the digits that were contained in that barcode at the top, and tells you off to the side here that that was a 22-digit barcode. In addition, it breaks down that barcode at the bottom here, telling you how it's interpreting that barcode based on your settings. So you can review this to make sure it's set up as you intended. So it tells me my RX number is this, my drug number is that, and my quantity is this. And if those are correct, then you can say, yep, I'm all set, I've got my settings properly, and I can go ahead and use these settings to fill my prescriptions. That includes our explanation of the barcode tab on the icon.